All right, guys, welcome back to Project Infinite. I'm Taylor,
I'm Tyler.
and this is episode 2. Today's subject is just going to be just a bit of a backstory on who we are, where we come from, where we grew up at. It's not really going to be topic oriented. It's more so just going to be just focused on our character, our character development, and how we just how things were growing up.
Yeah, it's kind of just how we it's based on our childhood.
Yeah. Go ahead. You go first.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know who we are, we are twins. Um, but we didn't always live together. We did get separated at about 3 years old. But for the first 3 years of our lives, we were born in Grand Forks and we lived in Grand Forks for the first 3 years. I don't remember any of that, so I can't really speak on what that was like. But we were separated at about 3 years old. He lived with our mom's side of the family with our grandmother, and then I lived with our dad's side of the family with our great grandmother, and she raised me from 3 years old till about 8 years old. That's when she passed away, back in like 2001, 2002 maybe. But yeah, I lived in Belcourt. He lived in Dunseith, North Dakota. For those of you who are from the area, of course, you guys know what that is. For those of you who don't know, we grew up on the top middle of North Dakota, so like 14 miles south of the Canadian border. That's how close we were to Canada. And our towns are about 15 miles apart from each other. As adults, that doesn't seem like nothing, especially when we have cars. But back in when you're a young child, that seems like a journey. It seems like we were so far apart. It felt like he was in a whole different country or a whole different realm back then. But growing up for me in those times, I grew up. We lived kind of outside of the town of Belcourt. And it was a pretty, like a 3 bedroom house, I want to say, right on top of a hill. It had a big basement, uh, a lot of land, a good portion of land, I ate out of a lot of berries or like bushes. We had a lot of raspberry bushes, choke cherry bushes, gazelles. I think that's what they're called, is gazelles. They're little green. They were little green, like berries, and they were sour. I can't remember what they were called, but I think they were called gazelles, something like that. We had a lot of apple trees, crab apple trees. For those who don't know what a crab apple tree is, or crab apple is, it's basically just a smaller apple. Rhubarb garden. Um, at one point, there's this huge little plot of land that was in the back of our house. I remember there being corn or some sort of field there, because I have a memory of actually him and I even playing in that field. I have a memory of us running up and down that field. Um,
I'm
but
pretty sure I remember that.
yeah, but I don't really remember how when it kind of died. But then it just became just a field. But at one point, I'm pretty sure there was like some sort of corn there. But my great grandmother, yeah, she gardened. She had a lot of different flowers. I had some vegetables around the house, so we ate a lot of that. And I basically climbed a lot of trees, explored the lands. There was a little lake, little pond. I can't say lake, more of a pond next to our house. I explored that. I climbed a lot of trees. Um, got wood ticks all over me, poison ivy, all sorts of stuff. I was just an outside kid. I had We had uncles, great uncles and aunties that lived right across the street from us. So I had a cousin that was pretty close in age with us. He was like 2 years older than us, maybe 2 or 3 years older. I did get to go visit them a lot. They lived directly across the street, and they had a nice plot of land too. And they had like they always had like four-wheelers and stuff like that. So I remember like being able to go across the street to go play with them. We played outside a lot. I had an uncle. He was same age as our cousins that I was just talking about. He was a couple years older than us. I got to hang out with him a lot. I was really close with him growing up. It's our dad's youngest brother. Um, but other than that, I mean, I was kind of, I was basically just the one child on that whole plot of land. Our grandma was really old, so it's not like she can really do a whole lot. Um, I always had a lot of We had dogs. I always had stray animals that would just come around the yard. So I would just take care of random cats, random dogs. So we had a lot of that growing up. But yeah, I was kind of alone a lot if I wasn't playing with our cousins across the street, or if the times that my uncle did get to come and visit, I was pretty much alone a lot of the time. I drew a lot. I didn't wasn't really listening to a whole lot of music back then because I didn't have access to it. Our great grandmother was old school country, and that didn't do anything for me. I couldn't gravitate towards that. I got into music from our uncle. He was the one who like introduced me to hip hop music, and that would come way later, but that's what grabbed me. But that's we're not at that part at all in the story. The main things that I remember from growing up was with our great grandmother. She had a lot of kids. Like I want to say like 15 kids, and they were always older to me, like old. So they were our great aunties and uncles. They had their own families. Like they were grandparents of their own too. A lot of them. And they established themselves in various parts of the states, various parts of the town that we lived in. They lived in other states, but I remember a lot of people used to come to that location, to our house, for a lot of the holidays. They would all bring their families, their grandchildren, their campers, RVs, whatever you want to call it, tents. So we had a lot of that. Almost every holiday there was always like this big gathering where everyone showed up, and I remember having a lot of fun a lot of those a lot of that time. So I got like a real sense of like that community, that closeness between family. But yeah, that was basically it. I of course I went to school, but that's like the essentialness of like how it was for me growing up. Just I was an outside kid, and grew up on a big plot of land. You just kind of do whatever it is you can do to entertain yourself. But you kind of weren't thinking about things like that back then. You weren't trying to figure out how to entertain yourself. It was just a natural thing. You kind of just did things. But I always did feel like there was an emptiness there, though, because of course uh, I always remember wanting to be, you know, be next to Taylor, grow up. I always wanted to visit, go to his hometown and visit, or have him come and camp. But it was like maybe like a couple times maybe a year where we would really hang out. But I always do remember that though. Though I always remember there was always like a sadness there. Um, but other than that, yeah, that was pretty much me growing up right there in Belcourt.
Yeah, my childhood was it was so I grew up in Dunseith, just 15 miles away from where he was staying at, and like he said in the beginning, it just felt like we were in two totally different worlds. Like I remember being together at one point when we were in Grand Forks when we were like 2 or 3 years old, and then it just I don't really remember much up until like maybe like five, but I do remember just being separated at one point, and then here you don't I didn't really think about it. It wasn't until he kind of moved in, but that gap between us being separated and us being kind of united, like it just felt like a long time. It just I don't know, you just don't really think about it, but back then it just felt like a really long time, but realistically it wasn't, because I mean even the past 5 years hasn't even felt that long, or
Mm-hmm.
even past 8 years. But I grew up in Dunseith in the trailer park, and the trailer park no longer exists. They actually tore down. There's no trailers there. I mean, there's no rows. There's nothing. There's kind of no sign of a trailer park ever being there, but that's where I grew up at. I spent a lot of my time just kind of wandering around between my grandmother's trailer, my mom's trailer, my neighbor's trailer. I didn't really do a whole lot besides just kind of venturing off and just kind of using my own imagination and, just kind of living in my own little world. Um, I think back then it was more so like I I spent a lot of time by myself, but I also had a lot of cousins and my brother, my older brother, who 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 hung around. My cousins, I had a lot of cousins growing up. They would come and go, and they would just hang out, and so I wasn't necessarily alone. It was just I was kind of alone in my own headspace. Back in those days, I remember I used to go to the local cafe with my grandma, and that's whenever you were able to smoke back then. Like, you know, nowadays you can't do that. I mean, maybe certain cafes, certain places you can still smoke in, casinos you can smoke in still, but like back then, you're able to smoke in a restaurant and stuff like that. But nowadays it's frowned upon and it's illegal to do things like that. But I do remember those types of memories. I spent a lot of time outside berry picking whenever the opportunity did present itself. Like when I did go with my grandma to her land up on Jackrabbit. And Jackrabbit's just a whole nother story itself. But my grandma had some land up north, and I used to go there all the time, and she would cut grass. I would help her. And yeah, whenever depending on what season it was, there would be strawberries, blueberries, raspberries growing up on her land, and we used to go berry picking and stuff after she would groom the land and stuff like that. And my mom, she would go up there depending on what season it was, and she would garden. She had like tomato plants growing. I don't really remember what other stuff she had growing. I just remember she had flowers and certain fruits and vegetables. I do remember that. I just don't remember the specifics and the details of what it was. So, I mean, in the summertime, if we weren't there, I was back in town with my grandma, helping her out with some random project. She would task me with certain things around the household. I would do store runs for her because we lived right next to the local gas station. She would give me, a couple bucks to go get some stuff for the house, whether it was snacks or whatever. Yeah, she used to give me like little small responsibilities throughout the household, and I really enjoyed it. I had a really fun. I'd say it was a fun, adventurous childhood. It just felt like there was always something going on in my life. My cousins they would come and pick me up, or my older brother, they would just pick me up and they would just take me around town, or they would just introduce me to all their friends. My grandmother was constantly introducing me to new people. So I felt a sense of community with the community. I was just a young kid getting to meet all the locals, all the people and stuff. So, I mean, I felt protected all the time. But obviously when you're a kid, um, a small town of like 700 people just feels so big and vast and huge. Back in those days, it felt like Dunseith felt like a city to me. If you would leave, you go for a ride with your cousin or your brother, and back then the town felt so alive.
Mm-hmm.
If you can drive down the road and you'd see maybe 30, 40 cars pass you by back then. That's what it felt like. You drive by the local basketball courts, and there was 30, 40 to 50 people there. It was so so full of life. That's what it felt like. You go walk by the turtle, which the turtle is it's just this big turtle structure made out of rims, and it was made back in like the 80s or 70s or 80s or something like that.
Actual tire rims.
Yeah, like rims,
Cars.
like made out of rims, all welded together, forming a giant turtle. And it's just this big tourist attraction whenever tourists do come down from Canada to see. But yeah, people used to hang out there all the time. People used to hang out at this location called the Rocks, which was right across the street in the bushes, right across from where we stayed. Yeah, I don't know. Life just felt so. There was just so much being breathed into Dunseith at that point. I think life has definitely drastically changed since then. But back then, I just remember just always feeling surrounded by people that were protecting me. That's what it always felt like. I think it was around the 8 or 9 year mark whenever you came up.
Yeah, not about 8, 9 years old. However old you are in fourth grade, that's how old we were whenever I
Yeah.
moved in.
So it was around that point in time whenever he you know, the that side of the family had gone through some things, and he ultimately he came to come live with us. And yeah, I mean, I life just changed at that point. You know what I mean? It was like he said, there's like an emptiness there. Like, you know that you have a brother, you know that you have a twin brother. And then after, you know, someone had passed in our family at that point, he came and stayed with us, and life just changed. I remember um I remember knowing now that I'll have a like a I guess you would say like a full-time playmate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, someone always there, and then now we can actually get to know each other, even though we weren't separated very long, you know. But back then, like I said, it felt like a long time. It 100%, it felt like a decade or something.
Yeah.
Even longer, it felt like a really long time, because you're not thinking about how time passes when you're a kid, because you're just constantly living in the moment.
Yeah, everything is almost well, I remember like when you go to start school on Monday to get to the weekend, it almost felt like an eternity for that weekend
Yeah.
to come by. So like if he happened to come stay the weekend one time, and then or say I would talk to our mom or him on the phone, and it's, you know, we'd ask if we could camp, and if it was ever confirmed, like, yeah, well, I'll come. I'll drop him off. Like my mom or somebody would say, like, yeah, we'll drop him off this weekend. Like from that beginning of the week to the weekend, I remember feeling like that was like an eternity just to get through that week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, whenever I don't know if Ma remembers this. Maybe she does. Whenever she actually came to like pick me up, I didn't go right away. But before we go into that, like however old you are in third grade, like that's our great grandmother passed away. That's who took care of me. And then my great auntie stepped in, and she took over on the house. She still lives there to this day, and she was the one who took care of me for that following year. But then I remember being at school one day, and then we were inside the library doing our library time, and then I remember our mom walked in out of nowhere, and she was just like, you know, I was happy to see her, but then she was like, I'm here, you know, basically like, you know, you're gonna you know, come move in. And I at first I just remember being, because it just came out of nowhere, and I remember being like excited, but then this nervousness crept in, and I think it was ultimately like, I think I just didn't want to get in trouble for like just because I thought about like I'm probably gonna get in trouble if I ditch out and just go move in, you know, because that probably would have you know, that probably would have caused up a lot of you know, drama between the families if I would have went right away. But I didn't go right away because I remember getting scared, and then the teachers got involved, and the principals got involved, and I remember my mom had to, you know, she ultimately had to leave that day. And then here I didn't go to school the next day. I went home that day. Then I didn't go to school the next day, and then that's when our mom showed up with well, she showed up with the cops because there was literally nothing, like nobody could do. Like they couldn't keep me there. Like our mom had every right to like.
Well, I'm pretty sure. Well, obviously, I'm pretty sure she had custody, so there was nothing anybody else can do. She was more so, you were more so staying there on her terms. So
Yeah,
that's why the law
there was
enforcement.
yeah there was like some sort of agreement that had happened at some point, but
Yeah, so there was nothing they could do to stop her.
yeah. So that, and then I hopped in the car, and then here that next thing you know, like all that nervousness went away because I knew where I was going, you know. But I do remember this specific memory. Once we got to the doorway of or not the doorway, the end of the driveway, right where my cousin lives. I remember he was standing right at the end of his driveway, and he was just standing there watching everything. And I remember that taking that turn onto the road and then going, you know, driving away. And I remember him just watching. I don't know if he remembers that, but I remember that.
Yeah.
And then but yeah, that was so like I said, I don't know if Ma remembers any of that, but like I said, it was pretty pivotal moment. Um, and then I went to our new life. My new life was in Dunseith. Everything that had happened in Belcourt, all that was done with. And
Yeah.
then I moved to Dunseith, and then I remember when I pulled up to Dunseith, Taylor was we lived in a trailer court, like he said, and he was standing right on the porch waiting, and then I hopped out of the car, and then we just immediately just started kind of just playing.
Yeah, so that's kind of when a new chapter began. It was definitely a life changer at that point. So it was my grandmother, my sister, and Tyler and me all living in a small trailer together. And just back then, just to give you guys a quick backstory, we have a sister who's got cerebral palsy, and it's full blown cerebral palsy. You know, she can't walk, she can't talk, she can't do anything without another type of support or somebody taking care of her. So my grandmother was fulfilling that role, and my mother was helping out too. But yeah, he stepped into place. He moved in, and then things definitely changed. I know that there was structure in my life, but there became even more structure at this point. I know I had small tasks and chores, like I said, but the chores definitely they picked up. I think my grandma saw that now that there was two young boys in the household. There's more things that can be done, that can get done, and she was more so teaching us about responsibility and discipline and, what it's like, and just pretty much teaching us how to be young men at that point in our lives. Um, for, for growing up wise, not a whole lot changed. I think in terms of I think the thing that definitely I thought was amazing and like really cool at this point was the fact that like my friends, they knew about my brother, but they didn't they didn't know him. So like a lot of the friends that came around and stuff and came to meet him, they were just like so like just baffled. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, like your twin brother actually lives here now. And then he just immediately became like the popular kid, like you just
Yeah,
all the,
you're that new kid.
yeah, you just that new kid. And like there was a fascination, and all my friends were like just fascinated with him.
I think it was the simple. I think it would make what just made it more like amplified that feeling for everybody else. Like if we had just been brothers, like if you were a year older than me, or just if we were the same age, but if either of us was older, it probably wouldn't have had the same effect. But it was the simple fact that like we were actually twin brothers, but we looked so differently.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like we weren't. Of course, we're fraternal twins. He's 2 minutes older, so everyone like had this idea of us being twins, or they're like, oh, you if they found out, oh, you have a twin and he's here, and then if I'm being like toured around the school, everyone's like peeking out the door to like, oh, what does he look like?
Yeah,
It was kind of like, I think that's just what amplified it more. It was just the simple fact that we were twins. That's what like made it like, so like I had all like walking through the school, I had all these eyes on me all the time, and people were just like always looking at me, always fascinated because it was like a weird like almost being famous, and I was just quiet about it, and I didn't really
Well, I think back then too. Well, even out to this day, Dunseith is such a small school, Dunseith High School. So I mean, or Dunseith Public and the high school, they're just so small. So it's very noticeable whenever somebody new steps in. Whereas, and if you're going to a school with 1,000 to 2,000 people, you don't you might notice it by someone talking in passing, but like when somebody new steps in, it's really noticeable. Like you'll notice it the first 10 minutes of them being in that school. Like the talk just goes around really quick, and I think that's more so what happened.
yeah. Yeah. And
But
like I said, the twin thing just amplified it.
yeah, it was definitely like it just shined some light down on the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was saying, the discipline, the discipline and the structure in our lives completely was amplified. Chores were an every single day thing at this point. When we would get home from school, around the 3 o'clock, 3:15 mark, our grandma had a job at the school, and she worked in the special needs classroom, and which it all worked out anyways. I think the school kind of made her a deal because our sister has cerebral palsy, so our sister was in the special needs and stuff. So it ended up all working out. but our grandma would get home around 4:15, and that gave us an hour grace period to make sure everything was taken care of in the household. Everything from taking out the trash to sweeping the house to mopping to cleaning the bathroom to cleaning the kitchen, hand washing dishes, like all of that stuff. It was just a part of our daily life. And same with, we had a dog too. He was a Siberian Husky, and we had to walk him too. And I think that was like my favorite chore, considered a chore. I think that was definitely my favorite because we got to leave the house and take our dog for a walk. That was like the sense of freedom right there. We had a lot of things to do, but just before grandma got home, we had to just take care of the house. That was pretty much just, that was our childhood after high school or after school when we got home. Was
Yeah.
just was maintaining the household and making sure it was clean and making sure it was up to her standards.
Yeah, because growing up in Belcourt, I didn't really have a whole lot of responsibilities, like in terms of I remember I did vacuum, like do things like that, but I wasn't like you had like this is what you need to do. Like I didn't really have a whole lot of like that type of discipline until I moved into our with Taylor and our grandmother. And yeah, just like you said, there was an hour grace period before, like when we got off school. We lived right in the middle of both the elementary and the high school. We lived right at there was a V that connected it, or there was the high school over here, there was the elementary right over here, and we lived right down the road from each other. It was like a perfect. There was a V. I don't know. We lived at that connection point. So we would walk home from school, and then our grandma would, come home an hour later, and just like he said, we had to sweep the floors, we had to mop the floors, we had to vacuum the whatever carpet was there, wash all the dishes, hand wash them, dry them, put them away, take out the trash, and walk the dog. So yeah, all that stuff. And then our grandma would come home and 4 o'clock, and then she would unload our sister, and she would have to, she would get all that stuff ready, and she would, that's when she would start doing whatever it is she needed to do in terms of like dinner or whatever.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the consequences, like of not what would happen if we didn't do the chores, like the severity and the backlash we would face.
Yeah, it was. Our grandma was. She was very vocal.
Yeah.
She was very vocal in terms of like yelling at you. Like she can yell. Like the best way I can describe it, like the range her vocals would get to was the best way I can describe it is like we all know that that example of somebody with sharp nails or something, and that you go to a chalkboard and then here you scratch it, and then there's that screech that just like it hits your inner ear. It just, you could feel it in your brain and you feel it in your bones, and it makes you quench up. That was like how her voice could project into so you didn't want to hear that. You definitely did not want to get yelled at from our grandmother. Like, it was terrible.
It was frightening. It was like it was like when you yell. I'm not telling you guys to do this, but like if you yell at like an animal out of frustration,
Yeah.
when an animal like kind of curls up, that's what it kind of felt like. Like you just felt like you were gonna pee a little bit when she yelled at you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like. If you didn't, if things weren't done to her standards, or if the chores weren't done, or if like it was like one of those situations where when she says go take out the trash, and if you were to be like, okay, yeah, in a little bit, like if you were to reply to her in that manner, she's gonna be like, and it's not like, no, right now, please. It was like a bring it up like 3 octaves and turn the volume up a little bit. And then if you were to back talk her and say like, yeah, I will, grandma, just hold on, and then that's when the loud voice comes out, and that's when you're like, oh, like I pissed off grandma.
Yeah, that was yeah, she was never physical in any way like that. She never did anything like that. That yelling was just everyone knows like when you get yelled at, like you can get broke, like that's what drill sergeants, they yell, they try to mentally break you down.
Yeah.
That was for a lot of people, or if you're at a work, in the workforce of whatever the hell it is, and no one wants to get yelled at by their boss, or no one wants to get yelled at by their supervisor or anything. Everyone kind of avoids being yelled at. So it was kind of like that. But in a weird way though, I don't know if that prepared us for the world, but in a weird way, it kind of like it took away that fear of being yelled at in the future, because like nobody could yell at me the way our grandma yelled at us. Like I'm not really scared of getting yelled at by somebody. Like if somebody's gonna yell at us, like it doesn't really affect me as much, because
Yeah.
when people, like when we're in the work, when we're at our jobs and we're like, oh yeah, like what's blah blah yelled at me, or yeah, they're everyone's getting an ass chewing or something like that, and I like hear it, I'm like, that wasn't even that bad.
Yeah, it's usually everything that like a lot of people tell you in the workforce is usually over exaggerated. It's definitely not the type of yelling that we were used to.
Yeah, like that ain't, you didn't even get yelled at all. Like, so yeah, in a weird way, kind of prepared. So like it's kind of hard to take a lot of it serious.
Yeah, and
when
personal.
when I know like,
Well, that's the thing too, is like a lot of times employers, they're just trying to stop you from making mistakes, and they may raise their voice and say certain things, but like a lot of times all that stuff it'll be avoided uh for the sake of hurting someone's feelings, I guess. And things like that should always be addressed, but they're not always addressed because they don't want to yell, or they don't want to raise their voice, or they just don't want to talk about it. And then all this tension builds up over time, and then it usually leads to resentment. Trust me, I know. I've seen it happen in the workforce, not once, not twice, but quite a few dozen times. It just happens just because people try to avoid things like that. I think if you had a grandmother like ours, you definitely, your idea and your concept of being yelled at would definitely change.
yeah, you can take it. Is what we can say. Like,
Yeah,
what I'm saying, like I can take somebody yelling at me. Like,
yeah.
I can
If
take
if I could stand there and take being yelled at by a drill sergeant to the face without taking them serious, I'm.
and this isn't hypothetical. He actually was in the military.
Yeah. So like that type of scenario, like that, her energy, her manner, everything about her, like it was like a drill sergeant. So when I got, when I was in the military, it definitely, I mean, it just prepared me. I didn't take it serious. I just knew that they were trying to mentally break me down, and I saw guys that you can tell that they never necessarily had that type of discipline in their life prior to the military, because a lot of them, some of them cracked, and some of them either became suicidal or they wanted to give up. And I've seen it happen. Guys ended up getting kicked out because they became so suicidal just from being yelled at. And I understand. Everybody has their own way, I guess, their own life plan of how they grew up and stuff. But at the same time, like if you're joining any type of hardcore, anything as extreme as the military, you should probably know that like you're gonna get yelled at. You're gonna be told what to do 24/7. There's a level of discipline that needs to be maintained. You have to make your bed. You have to make sure your bed is clean. You just anything you could possibly think of. You have to make sure you're clean cut. You have to make sure you're shaved. Everything. There's no getting around it. And if you try, then you're digging your own grave.
Yeah, then you can't make up excuses or anything.
Yeah,
like,
there is.
like if you fucked up or anything. Or
Yeah,
lied.
there's just no way. There's no way around that. You're just constantly being monitored, no matter what, and that's total control over your life, which is not how we grew up, but it prepared you for those types of things.
So yeah, but so the only way to avoid that was to just, we knew we didn't want to hear it from her, so we just did what we had to do. We did what we were told, and we did what we had to do to, to not hear that from her. And, and but like I said, and it did build that discipline within us, though. It built in discipline.
Yeah. Well, we were also rewarded too. It's not like we did all this stuff without being rewarded. Like back then, like we would get an allowance every day. Our grandma, not every day, so every 2 weeks our grandma would get paid, and we would get like a $10 allowance each. And like
Mm-hmm.
back then, like believe it or not, back then in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, like around the 2005 to 2010 era, like back then, $10 would get you so much. Like you can walk into a grocery store and you can buy probably like 5 to 6 to 7 items depending on what you're getting. You can buy enough to feed you and your friends with $10 back
Well,
then.
there was a meme that went around a couple of years ago. A little picture. It showed like what $20 got you back then versus $20 gets you now. Like back then on that part of the meme, there was a full cart, and then right next to that there was like a couple items in nowadays what $20 can get you. Like that was true. Like $20 or $5 can get you a lot too
Yeah.
back then. So yeah, we don't want to make it sound like she was just like always yelling or anything. Like she was incredibly loving and incredibly soft at the same time. She could just turn it up whenever she needed to. She can turn it up.
Yeah, I mean, if her goal was to get us to do what needed to get done, well, I mean, she 100% accomplished that. Um, she used to, so our grandmother, she used to every other payday she would get paid, and then she was a bit of a gambler. She liked to go to the casinos and stuff, and it wasn't like she was like addicted to gambling. She just,
She
that was
like
like
that.
that was like her outing, like one of her things that she did for fun. It's not like if you're from the Turtle Mountain area and you come from the type of background we came from, you're not necessarily taking vacations, and you're not going to Cancun, and you're not going to Mexico, and you're not leaving the country. Your fun is probably either
Go to the casino, or even just leaving the area to go to the next biggest town, which in North Dakota, like places like Minot, Grand Forks, or Fargo. Like those are like, they're huge places if you're from a small town, and like going to those places are like vacations. Like just to to get out of town is a vacation. But for a lot of people too, like just like you said, you don't really no one's really traveling out of country or to a Cancun or wherever a vacation spot
yeah.
is. No one's really doing that.
Yeah. Like, so whenever payday would come, like I said, on top of the gambling, before she would take off to the casino on payday, she would stop at the grocery store, and she would just load up on groceries, and she would get everything from fresh produce to, she would get steaks, she would get meat and stuff, and as a reward too, I think she rewarded us with takeout. So the local cafe, she would always put in this huge food order for either takeout pizzas and or sandwiches or whatever we wanted. She would get it. She would just order a bunch of stuff, and that would be like our one of our rewards for either babysitting or for cleaning and doing what we were asked to do. But yeah, we didn't just strictly have, like, our grandma, she worked, but we also grew up on commodities too. So we grew up on like government assistance and stuff like that. So like if you've ever drink vitamin D, like the canned milk, we feel you. We've been there before, like
Yeah,
drinking
canned milk, powdered milk,
powder and storage milk, and like the real commodities, and
canned meat.
yeah, for you natives back home, commodity cheese is like it's like a brick of gold. But we also grew up on that stuff too. It was definitely a major a part of our life. She would So before she would take off to the casino, she would always like, we were responsible for watching our sister who's got cerebral palsy, and you got to keep in mind too, like we mentioned, we were just young boys. We were from the ages from 8 to 10 to 11. We were just young boys.
She was 9 years, and our sister is 9 years older than us.
Yeah, but I think like we just intuitively knew from watching, from like visually watching our grandma take care of her. Like we knew how to take care of her. Obviously, not to the extreme how our grandmother knew, because our grandmother obviously took her to appointments and all that stuff and did everything that you have to do for people that are in that situation. But like she would, we would be responsible for making sure she had, she stayed hydrated. When it came down to us eating, we would make sure we would feed her in the same in that process. She had asthma. Well, she has asthma, and we had to make sure we gave her her mask, like her nebulizer and stuff. We we had to time out certain things. Like if she was on medication, we had to make sure we timed it out. And we were like really good. We were really, really, really good with
Mm-hmm.
like just being responsible for her whenever grandma was gone. Like I don't know how, but like we were just really good at it.
Yeah. So yeah, like yeah, just nowadays you can't. You probably people would probably look at a family sideways if that happened. But back then, no one we didn't think about it like that. Like we certainly didn't think about it like you know um we're only like 8 9 years old and you're gonna leave us with our sister with cerebral palsy, like, and we got to take care of her. Like we can't do that. Like it was never that, like that never crossed our mind. It was the simple fact that our grandma was leaving to the casino and now we have the house we have the trailer to ourselves, and we can kind of, it's that we have a lot more freedom. So it was just like it was something to look forward to. Like we know when payday came around, you know, we kind of get the house to ourselves and we can kind of just do whatever we want. Not like whatever we want, but within the limits. Um,
Well, it's not like we were like, we weren't, I mean, we did have our bad, like where we did bad things, but like we also knew where to draw the line in terms of like not burning the house down or playing with fire inside the house.
we knew not to, we knew not to take off and leave our sister there by herself. Like we didn't do dumb things like that or anything, but yeah, we were 8 years old taking care of our sister with cerebral palsy, just, and then yeah, nobody thought different about that. Like there were times when like adults would stop by to come visit, and maybe they were kind of come see our grandma for whatever reason, and then here they would knock on the door, and then we'd open up the door and she'd be like, hey, is there your grandma around? Nope, she went to the casino. And then here, no one looked at it like, so it's just you two here and your sister. Like nobody thought like that. It was just like, all right, well, I'll stop by tomorrow. That's just what it was. Like no
Yeah.
one, it was. Nowadays that probably wouldn't fly nowadays, but back then there was just what it was. We had the trust. Like our grandma had that. She had enough trust in us to be able to do that. She knew we were going to get the job done.
Yeah. I mean, and plus, I mean, we helped take care of our baby sister and our baby niece at the time too. So like
Yeah.
we just always knew how to take care of like I don't know, I guess living beings. Like it was just like you just
Yeah.
know that you have to take care of this person, because if you don't take care of them, then they're going to be neglected. And I think we just intuitively knew that, like they have to eat, they have to drink, they have to
Yeah.
you have to just keep an eye on them, like no matter what. You don't just abandon your responsibilities and just leave. Like that would be irrational.
Yeah. Then yeah, that was that. She would go to the casino and she would probably leave, usually come back around midnight, maybe a little after midnight. And she would do her shopping for the 2 weeks. We had that week after payday, we knew we at least that for that week we were gonna have like steaks one day, chicken the next day, pork chops the next day after that.
Comfort food too.
Yeah, kind of like stuff like that. And then as that week goes on, and then here the next week, that's when the food kind of became more so like hot dishes, casseroles. If you don't know what a hot dish is, it's basically a casserole. Simple soups, canned whatever, some sort of canned food. The quality of food went not down, but I that's the only way I can really explain it, is it kind of went down, but we didn't look at it as like, oh, this food sucks compared to steaks or sucks compared to that. It was just food. Like now as an adult, I can look back and be like, yeah, the quality of food went from up here to just somewhere else. But back then we didn't think about it like that. It was still good to us.
Yeah, I mean, a meal
was
was
a
a meal.
meal,
Like you're not going to complain about a meal somebody's cooking for you. I mean, unfortunately that happens, but I mean, like, with our situation, what we were living in, there was just no room for complaining ever.
Yeah, if our grandma cooked steaks or something and we didn't want to eat steaks, so like I want, I'd rather have pizza or pizza rolls or something like. No, that wasn't happening.
Yeah,
That
what's
wasn't
made,
gonna
what's on
fly.
the table is what you're gonna eat, and if you decide not to eat, then you're just gonna go to bed hungry.
Yeah.
That's just that was just what the deal was.
So our mom lived right next. Our mom lived next door to us too. She lived in the trailer park as well, obviously, and that was interesting. She lived there with our baby sister at the time when I moved in. Our sister was one, maybe less than 1 years old. She was in that age range, and she lived there with her. I'd call him our stepdad.
Yeah.
And well, that was our little sister's dad. But yeah, and they lived in the trailer next door to us. And like I said, that was interesting with our mom being next door. She went to work during the daytime, and then she would come home after work around like 5 o'clock maybe, and then she would pretty much every day she would always stop at the trailer, and she would just visit for hours on end with us, with our grandmother. They would just sit there and BS, and she would eat dinner too, and then after a certain point in the night then she would go back to her house and go do whatever it is she was gonna go do.
Even though our mom like lived next door, some days it felt like she lived far away, because there would be those days where she wouldn't come over for a couple days.
Yeah.
Where like I wonder what mom's up to, but like you go over to go knock on her door and she wouldn't answer some days. You could just tell that she kind of just wanted to be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, like a young kid who just wants to see his mom, you're going to be kind of pesty, and you'll knock and you'll knock and you'll knock and you'll knock and you
Yeah.
won't stop bothering your mom, which was the case a lot of the times too. But I mean, she lived right next door, and
Yeah.
we just we all maintained a close relationship, but at the same time, like, you obviously can see the clear, you can differentiate staying at our mom's house compared to our grandma's house.
Mm-hmm.
Our mom's house, it felt like there was more freedom,
Mm-hmm.
whereas in grandma's house it was more structured and more like there was a lot of rules in place.
Mm-hmm.
So there was definitely that. I mean, I like both places, because like there would be times where I'd stay at mom's for like 2 or 3 days, and then you're like, man, I miss grandma's. And it's like literally like 20 steps away.
Yeah, we know, like, if we were going to go to our mom's and go hang out or something, we know, like, there's a why. At least we can go watch a bunch of movies, because our grandma didn't have a whole lot of DVDs or a lot of VHSs or anything like that, at least not in the beginning. But our mom had a bunch of that stuff, so we knew we can go, like, watch a bunch of movies or something if we are going to go hang out there. Or there was more, like, room to eat snacks, because she always had snacks or stuff like
Or
that.
different kind of snacks. Or
Yeah.
she usually had like some different types of food in her cupboard, like canned goods or just like chips, different types of chips that grandma wouldn't get. So it was nice to always kind of switch it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So around the era we grew up at, flat screens they obviously weren't a thing back then. It was just a big box, like the big box TVs. You turn them on and you can hear the static electricity and stuff like that. And we only had one TV in our house, and now it was in the living room. And our grandma and our sister pretty much reigned over the TV. Like, our grandma would wake up in the morning, make her coffee, do whatever she would do, get ready, get our sister ready, and then immediately the soap operas would be on. Yeah, she would watch
Price is Right.
Yeah, she would watch Bob Barker on Price is Right, and she would just put on her soap operas, and that would be from like, well, it would be the NBC News, like the news in New York. That would be on from like 6:30 in the morning up until like 9, and then from 9 she would change it, and then she kind of had her pattern of shows she would put on, and that would continue on all the way up until close to like maybe, I don't know, 1-2 o'clock, and then most days she would take a nap whenever we were younger. And then usually if she would take a nap or she didn't take a nap, it was immediately our sister would get to watch her shows. And there was no touching the remote. Like, if our sister, obviously we wouldn't dare to touch it when our grandma had control over the TV, but if our sister was watching a show, we would kind of take the remote, go to the guide. And keep in mind, this is cable. There's no scrolling between, you can't watch, 300 different channels. There was maybe anywhere from in the beginning 30 to later on
Yeah,
70
60.
some channels, and some of them were blocked off. And we would go to the guide and just kind of see what was going to be coming on next in the coming hours. But once we took the remote, looked at the guide, like our sister made it very known that she was upset, because remember, she's got cerebral palsy, and she couldn't really react the way we would react if we were upset. She would more so she would get angry, and you can see that anger whenever we changed the channel, or if we attempted to change the channel, and she would definitely make a noise at you, and she would tell you that I'm upset, you better change it back.
Yeah. Hey, so yeah, we pretty much grew up on Lifetime movies and Golden Girls and stuff like that. But like you said, our we did get our times whenever we could watch TV. Like our grandma, she would, pretty much she would like clockwork take a nap all the time. She would nap, and she would nap from anywhere from like a half hour to an hour usually. And during that period, that's when we can kind of just watch whatever we wanted to watch, whether it was um, Nickelodeon, cartoons, stuff like that. Oh yeah, but also when we got off school too, like we said, there was that grace period from 3 to 4 when our grandma wasn't home. We can kind of put something on in the background while we were cleaning up. But other than that, we didn't. Yeah, we didn't get to. We didn't really get to watch whatever we wanted to watch, unless she was taking a nap, or if she was gonna go to bed. We did have a kind of a bedtime, but there was a period where she would fall asleep and we would just stay up and kind of watch. At 10 o'clock, that's when we would put on Adult Swim or something.
Yeah. I actually just thought about this. We actually if we were watching TV, remember we had that CD, that small CD player in our room, and we had a couple of CDs that we would literally just listen to music some days, just listen to the lyrics and stuff. I remember that just popped up into my head.
Yeah, and that was another thing. Whenever you were brought up you had to look at when you go into the guide to see what's coming up, and you can kind of scroll to the left to be like, oh, it's this movie's going to be on in an hour, so now we got to figure out what to do for an hour. And you couldn't, there was no streaming or anything. You had to wait. If something was going to come on in 3 hours, you have to figure out what to do for 3 hours.
Yeah, you couldn't pull out your phone. I mean, phones weren't cell phones just weren't a thing back then. You couldn't just find internet. You didn't have access to internet, or just to keep yourself entertained. Your entertainment was your imagination for the most part. Besides listening to music with our CD player, I remember at some point in time we got our own TV at one point, but it was just a small TV, about the screen maybe yay big, and it had a built-in VHS player. And yeah, obviously, if you grew up around that time frame when we grew up, DVD players had just started to hit the market, and DVD players were just revolutionary back then.
Yeah, there was and then yeah, one thing we didn't really one thing we kind of forgot to bring up. I guess I'll bring it up now, because now that I'm thinking about it, so the trailer was it was a 2-bedroom trailer. There was a middle room, and then there was a back room. Our sister lived in the back room. The middle room had a bed in it, but like Taylor was saying earlier, whenever he was growing up, whenever I wasn't in the picture, we had cousins, older cousins, and our older brother that were kind of in and out. That middle room was kind of, I guess, for that area. But when I moved in, other than our sister living in the back bedroom, all of us slept inside the living room. Our grandma, she never had a room. She always slept on the living room couch for as long as forever. There was one long couch, which she slept on. There was a smaller couch that looked just like the longer couch, but it was just a smaller portion. There was a recliner. And when our grandma got our sister home from school, when she got off work and she would get her, settled in, she sat on the recliner until it was time for her to go to bed. And then we would take turns, sleep. One night I would sleep in the recliner, he would sleep on the shorter couch, and then we would switch it around. The next night I would sleep on the shorter couch, he would sleep on the recliner, and then sometimes we would sleep on the opposite end of our grandma, on the same couch as our grandma. He would mostly slept with our grandma more because he was shorter than I was, and I was always just, I was always taller. But that was pretty much, so we all stayed inside that living room, and then that that still carry that I still carry that. Like, there's out of whatever apartments I've ever like lived in, or what had my own bedroom. Like, I have my own bedroom now, of course, in my own bed, but there's something about falling asleep inside a living room. There's something about falling asleep on a couch that I find more comforting. That I'd rather fall asleep in a living room on a couch. But it's, like I said, I do have, like, we have our own beds and our own things, but I still carry that. Like, I still feel that comfort, more comfort there. And then there was a point when our he said we used to take care of our niece too. Like, our older brother, who was 9 years older than us, him and his girlfriend at the time, they had kids. They moved in with us too, and they lived in that middle room, and we got really close with them at that point. I just wanted to bring that up really fast. What the sleeping situation was.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good point to bring up because we didn't like have rooms growing up. It wasn't until later on down the road, like some years down the road, where we actually were able to stake a claim to that room,
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until way later.
That kind of goes right into there was a point in time when it wasn't just us living inside that trailer. It was there was one point when we had 3 extra bodies living inside that trailer, which was our cousins, 2 males and 1 female. And they moved in with us probably like around when we were in 5th grade. I think they moved in with us.
Well, what started out to be like a weekend visit to come see us and hang out with grandma ended up turning into, maybe they're going to stay another weekend. And then next thing you know, it just ended up turning into them living with us.
Yeah.
That's what it turned into. It was something that just happened.
Yeah. And then, in that 2-bedroom trailer, there was us 2, our grandmother, our sister with cerebral palsy, and then our 3 cousins, and then our older brother was kind of in and out as well. So at any point there was between 7 and 8 people living inside that 2-bedroom trailer. And then in the beginning, when they first moved in, we all slept in that living room as well. Our cousin that was a girl, she was a couple years older than us. One of the cousins was the same age as us, and then the other one was just a year younger than us. The girl, we basically just gave her, she got to sleep on the short couch pretty much every single night, while we would rotate between the recliner, and we would just make beds on the living room floor. And then that's where we all fall asleep. Eventually, our grandma made enough money to save up to where our female cousin can get a bed, and she shared the back bedroom with our older sister, so she got that to herself. And then she saved up some more money to get bunk beds, and then that's when we utilized that middle room a lot more, where we took out the original bed in there, and then we built those bunk beds. And then that's kind of where we all would sleep, like 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, and then our grandma was basically in the living room. But yeah, I mean, think about that. Like, there was 8 of us inside that little 2-bedroom trailer, and our grandma took care of all of us. She was able to feed us all. She still worked, and she just made it work.
Plus animals.
Yeah, and
we had a couple
cats,
and we had a couple cats, and then we had our dog outside too. Also, one thing that we forgot to mention too with the chore list was Even this we never complained about because it kind of sucks to do, but we did it without complaining, cleaning up dog poop.
Oh yeah.
Because our dog, he had his own little doghouse out front, and he was he was chained up to the to like a little stake in the ground. And dogs, I mean, if you don't clean up after them, if you don't clean up their mess and stuff like that, it builds up over time. And you can see like his little area where he continuously walked all the time when he was outside, and there was just poop all over the place. And I think it was like once every 2 weeks we had to go outside and clean it up. That was another chore that we had to do too, was cleaning up like mass amounts of dog poop, because it built up so quick and so fast. And I remember there would be like sometimes like 1 to 2 decent sized garbage bags of dog poop just built up. And
yeah, he was well fed and he shit a lot.
Yeah, and I remember we used to. Our grandma would just be like, "Hey, like, you guys got to go clean up dog poop. Go into the closet, and in the closet there was a bin with like 30 to 40 pairs of gloves, and we would just grab a pair of gloves, and then just go pick up dog poop. And then once we were done, our grandma would separate certain things, and she would wash those gloves, and then they would get reused. Mm-hmm. And then you never really thought about it, like if you needed a pair of gloves in the wintertime, like you would grab one of those pairs of gloves sometimes, and you really wouldn't think about it like, oh, like this was used to clean poop. Like, mm-hmm. like there was like a recycling, like a sense of recycling all the time and reusing things, just making sure it gets washed,
Yeah. And then, the chores continued. We all still kind of had our own chores to do. Like with all of us living inside there, we still had to maintain things. But that time in life was fun. That was a fun time in life. We had just more people to play with, more people to talk to.
Yeah, and it was also a really like music was at that point, because music was such a huge deal, because like there was no such thing as cell phones. MP3 players were just like on the barely like hitting the cusp of being created. So if you had a CD player, that was like your freedom. Was if you wanted something else to do, you grab a CD, put it in your CD player, and like that was like one of your ways of kind of escaping reality. Even as a young kid, you find a way to escape, and that was one of them.
Yeah, if you could find CD, if you could buy a CD, that was we would always trade CDs, or can I borrow your CD for an hour? I want to listen to it. If we wanted to listen to, we had a lot of burned CDs. Our older brother had the CD collection full of burned CDs. Around this time, if you wanted to listen to a certain, whatever was popular at the time, that's when like things like Rhapsody and 106 in Park were on. Like if you wanted to listen to something else other than, your CD collection, you have to tune in to these networks to listen to to hopefully find something that you really liked. And that's when we had like MP3 players. Like you can, like that was pretty monumental if you had an MP3 player that can record something. So then here, if there was a song that you liked that was on, you can put the MP3 player up to the speaker, and then here you get a very, very bootleg or very low quality version of that song, but that's what you kind of had to work with.
Well, back then, like it's not like the sound quality was crisp and perfect like it is nowadays. Everything is obviously like evolving, like technology is evolving and sound is evolving in like Spotify, Apple Music and stuff like that. So back then, like even having something with horrible sound quality, like you didn't think about it as horrible sound quality. All you thought was like, well, I mean, we have a pretty good recording, so like we can listen to this over and over and over if we want to. And sometimes you're only able to record like 20 seconds of a song.
Yeah, and then also that was also when, this kind of has nothing to do with anything. But I remember 106 in Park or Rhapsody, they'd never play the full song. It was always like, if it was a 3-minute song, they played maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then they would always cut it off. And then because they have to keep the show going. Yeah, that was always frustrating.
But yeah, I mean, like the chores ended up continuing. We maintained our discipline. I will say, like, it did feel like our grandmother was a little bit tougher on you and I. Mm-hmm. Out of anybody in the household, it felt like she was a bit tougher on us, just because, like, I don't know if it was just it had to have been just one of those things where like we seemed like the older boys out of everyone, and we like there was more of a huger responsibility bestowed upon us because we were ultimately grandma's like, we were just her right hand man, and she was always more disciplined with us. Like everyone was disciplined in the household, but like it just felt like we were pushed to do more things all the time,
Yeah,
all the time.
there were like simple examples, like if um so our grandma was really like, she was very handy. She knew exactly how to she was very like, if something needed to be fixed in the house, like she knew, she kind of knew what to do, or she would just be like, she would do what needed to be done, or just try to figure it out. Like if it was wintertime and the pipes froze or something, um and there was no other option, well then she knew to get the hammer, go to the siding of the, she knew where the water pipes were, so she would get the siding, pull the nails out, and then here we had to fit. She'd physically crawl under the house and grab some heaters and just put them to wherever the water pipes were. And that's what we kind of had to do to unfreeze pipes sometimes. But she usually called on us. Like she knew, like, Tyler, like, come help. She knew without, come help me. She never really called on the other guys, the other kids, to like really, help. I don't know, whatever her reasons were, but she usually just called on us to more so do those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, at that age, you kind of think more. You just kind of think of like, why me? But like, obviously nowadays, as an adult, you're like, I'm glad she chose me to do that.
Yeah.
She, so she was just like this crazy jack of all trades. She knew how to do carpentry work. She knew how to change carpet. She changed the side paneling. She anything that needed to be fixed in our household, she did. She even built her own cabinets at one point. I remember she had the pre-built-in cabinets that came with the trailer whenever it was first bought, and then there just came a time where they just became they were
Just old.
yeah, they were just old, and they needed to be replaced. And I remember she rebuilt every single one of them herself. So, like, she stained them and finished them and put the hinges and everything. Like, she did it all on her own. And I remember she did that in the wintertime. So like she had all this carpentry stuff in the house in the wintertime. She had these sawhorses and stuff, and like the tools to cut wood, and she was doing that in the middle of winter in the trailer. So like, you got to keep in mind, this is a trailer house, and if you're in the living room or you're in the middle room, you're gonna hear a saw cutting through wood, like in the middle of wintertime. And like, you just most people would be like, I'm gonna wait till summer or springtime to go outside to do this stuff. Like her, like, if she put her mind to something, she would do it.
Yeah, I remember whenever. I remember all those cupboards. They kind of sat inside the, because she had to, like, she was busy building, but there was the old cabinets that were up still, and then there was the cupboards, cabinets, whatever you want to call it, and then the new ones that were gonna be built were inside the living room or in the kitchen. And I remember it was like a maze. You had to like work your way around it because they didn't get put up right away. It was like a few, like maybe they stayed there about a month or so, and we kind of used them as forts growing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, then there came the time where she knew how to like put them up. But our older cousin ended up helping her like actually install them because of course they were heavy.
Yeah.
So she needed more like
Manpower.
manpower to put them up. So yeah, but yeah, she was just incredibly skilled. She just knew in those aspects. She just knew how to and she did what needed to be done.
Yeah, yeah. It is like the definition of like a true independent woman.
Mm-hmm.
Like a woman that she doesn't need literally a man to depend on to do anything. Like in most cases, except for obviously putting the cabinets up themselves, but like she did everything on her own, and she just kind of just made life happen for us. And that's obviously something you should always be mindful of and be thankful for, is that if you're just a kid and some adults, they don't necessarily make life happen for you, they just kind of just let it pass you by. But our grandma didn't. Our grandma was just, I don't know, she was just a one of a kind person.
Yeah, she knew what needed to be done. If something was, like I said, with pipes froze, she knew there was like there was the shitty option. But if all you have was the shitty option, then that's kind of what you have to do. You have to do what's necessary to be able to keep moving.
Yeah, she was really good with everything, but like when it came to advice about like anything,
Yeah.
like in terms of like if you were having trouble with anything in your life with like, well, you shouldn't really have a whole lot of problems going on in your life as a young kid anyways, but
Yeah,
like
your
you know,
problem stump. Yeah, as a teenager, becoming a teenager, your problems are probably like with a maybe a crush or something, or you
yeah.
have a yeah maybe there's a girl you like, or you're having problems with your friends or something like that. She never really had advice for like that. She never. I don't think I've ever gotten any sort of advice from her like that.
Yeah, there's like never really a whole lot of words of wisdom. She was more so like a doer. Like her language was action. Like it was just her doing things all the time. It wasn't like you can ask her for words of encouragement or just like
Mm-hmm.
or just little hints of little sprinkles of wisdom here and there. It wasn't like you got that. I mean, she would say a couple things every now and then, but like I said, her everything about her was just through action.
Yeah, if let's just say I wanted to, let's say I want if I was younger and I wanted to start going to the gym or something like that, and if I were to tell like, yeah, I'm gonna start getting into the gym, and then I'm gonna go at 6:30 in the morning, she would kind of walk, like if it became 6:30 in the morning, she would like walk by, like, better get up. But she would never, like, say if you missed the gym, she wouldn't be like, remember you said you were gonna go, like, keep going. She would just be like, she wouldn't even bring it up to you. It was
Yeah.
just like, oh, you missed it, I missed today. And it was never like, well, like what I just said. She wasn't like, oh, remember what you said, you were gonna keep going. It was never like that sort of encouragement. Either you got up or you didn't get up.
Yeah, not like a life coach. It wasn't like she was going to force you to hold you accountable for she held you accountable, just not held you accountable for certain things that you would say you were going to do.
Yeah.
Like you were like, "Oh, I'm going to go to the gym, grandma, and I'm going to be serious about it." And if you weren't serious about it, she wouldn't hold it against you and be like, "Oh, you said you were going to do this and you wanted to be held accountable for it, but now you're not doing." Like there were that didn't exist.
Yeah, she taught us how to just be. If there's something that needs to be done, you kind of just have to get up and do it. You just have to get up and do it, and you have to find a way or something. That really stuck with us in terms of like as we were growing up, we knew like money was scarce a lot of the time. Um, we kind of wanted to start making our own money so we can like, where we can buy the sodas we wanted to drink, or we can buy the snacks that we actually wanted to eat, or stuff like that. So at young ages, we knew how to like hustle. Like we knew how to, we would do things like we would go to the richest man in Dunseith, and he owned a lot of stuff in Dunseith, and we would go up to him and say like, hey, is there anything we can do to make some money? And he would just say things like, go clean up garbage in these ditches, go do here, then go, once you're done with that, go to this one, and then come see me when you're done. And then we would, then he would give us like $10 or something.
Keep in mind, we so cleaning up a ditch is a lot of work. Like
Yeah.
it's picking up trash on the side of a ditch in your own community. That's a lot of work. And like when we got handed $10 each, like we didn't really the concept of like, well, I should be getting paid more than this. That didn't exist. It was like our reward was $10 each, and to us that was like more than enough to support what we wanted to do.
Yeah, we knew we wanted to get snacks for that night, and we knew we wanted to rent a movie or something, or we knew we were going to hang out with our friends and we wanted to just have some snacks or something. Like that's like that. Those were our goals, and we're like, okay, how can we make that happen? We want to go play some video games with our friends, and we want to be able to have some snacks. So what can we do right now to make sure we can make that happen? Okay, it's winter time. Let's go around and let's knock on doors, and let's see if we can shovel some driveways for a couple bucks, whether it's $2 or $5. If we only get paid $2 per house, well then we better go do a bunch of houses, so that way we can at least have enough money to buy enough snacks for all of us. It was things like that. Like that's how we operated. Wintertime we shoveled snows. Summertime we cut grass for the church or
Yeah.
stuff like that. And of course babysitting. We would do things for our mom, like
And our cousin.
we would do things for our mom, like she would ask us to vacuum out her car, clean her car, and we'd say, well, we're gonna get paid to do it then. Just little things like that. If we had a goal in mind, we knew we had to at least put in some work. We had to put in some
Yeah.
work to try to make that happen. So that was a big thing we learned from our grandma too, was
Nothing is going to happen for you.
yeah,
You have to make things happen.
Yeah, you have to put in that work. You have to make it happen rather than just, sit around and hope,
Well,
hope
we
for
didn't like there was those days we didn't hope that our mom needed her car cleaned. Like we would ask her like, "Hey, mom, do you have anything to do like that? Like any way for us like we can do some work for you and make some money?" And I remember sometimes she'd be like, "Well, I need my Christmas tree taken down, and keep in mind this is like July."
Yeah.
Like she'll be like, "Well, I do want to take my Christmas tree down. It's July right now," and we're like, "Okay, well, we'll take it down." And then she would end up paying us like
Yeah.
$5 to $10, and there you go. That's a way to make money. You put in the effort, you put in the work. If you want to if you wanted to make money back then, especially as kids, you just got to figure out a way to keep that mindset going. I mean, because you're going to carry that with you in most people's lives, that you're going to carry that with you.
Yeah. Then there did come a point after like those 2 years where our cousins all lived with us. Like they did eventually go back to, with their mom. And then it was just back to just us in the house, us in the trailer. And then that's kind of when we, around the time they were living with us to when they left, that's when we were more trusted to be able to like explore the town without like without so much supervision, and we can kind of become more familiar with the town. We started to hang out with a lot of our friends more, like a lot of our our classmates that lived in town. They all so whenever they left, we were familiar with the town, and we were familiar, so we would all go hang out with our friends. And kind of an interesting thing with our friends was with our age group specifically. It was our group of friends and our age. We all lived in the town of Dunseith. That was kind of weird how it all worked out. Like everybody above us, the ages above us, all the grades above us, none of them lived in town. At least not that I know of. They all lived outside of town, up in the hills or out in the country, out in the boonies. They all lived scattered away from the town, and even the kids below us, who were all like the kids that were below us, who all were like had their own group of friends. They didn't live in town either. They all lived outside of town. But like our group of friends, who we were all close with, we all just happened to live inside of town. So we were like basically the only kids inside that town that were like, out doing things, out running around, kind of making, bringing life into that town.
And causing trouble.
And and definitely causing a lot of trouble.
That was like a huge part of our. I mean, we obviously you live for every single. You don't really care what's going on. You just want to have fun, even if that means you might be terrorizing the community, which was like ultimately the case for us. But it was only at nighttime. If that helps any guys, we definitely we found a lot of pleasure and a lot of joy in just like doing things that like a lot of kids still do to this day, like from stealing bikes. Yeah, we stole a lot of bikes.
Yeah, that was a big thing. All of us, like us and our whole entire group of friends, that was just like, cause that was our way of getting around. Nobody had cars or anything, so we had to ride bike, and then we would wait till nighttime, and then sneak into yards and find the coolest bike. Or we knew this person over here has a really awesome bike. Well, it's not gonna be theirs anymore. Like we wouldn't steal from each other, but like all our friends, but like there were kids who lived in town that we just didn't really know too well or anything, but we knew they had a cool bike or something, so we were going to try to steal it, and then we would take them to a designated area. We all took apart bikes, and we were always constantly building bikes, spray painting them, doing stuff like that. So like, yeah, if your bike got stolen back in those days, chances are it was our group of friends.
Yeah, more than likely.
Yeah, and you know, we always got into some sort of like our town had a curfew at 10. There was at 10 o'clock. There was this huge horn that would just sound off, and you could hear it for miles in town and outside of town. You can hear it. When 10 o'clock came, it would ring, and then that's how you knew there was, it was, if you were under the age of 18, you weren't really supposed to be out on the streets or anything. They kind of, unless they would make you go home or, um, I think that really just applied to young kids, not really like if you're a teenager, no one really cared. But I mean,
I also think that rule was it was kind of put into place because of the things that we did, like the curfew.
yeah, and then yeah, and we always challenged that. Like as soon as that bell rang, like of course us being who were, all of us, none of us were gonna listen to that curfew. We challenged it all the time. We essentially, yeah, we would purposely all stay out late, and then we would just egg on the cops. We would do, there was a few cop cars that would just kind of patrol the town, and we would make them see us, and so that they can chase us, and we would run through alleyways, and we would do all kinds of stuff like that. So that was essentially a lot of the stuff we did. We would, unfortunately, looking back on it now, but we would we egg houses, egg cars, and just did, and stole from stores, things like that. We found, like, we didn't think of, I can't speak for any of our friends, but we knew kind of where the line was. We knew we weren't trying to be criminals or anything. Like, we knew we weren't going to grow up and be criminals or let this be a stepping stone to bigger things. But it was just a game to us. Like, let's not get caught by the cops tonight. Let's run through all these bushes. How many fences can we jump? Stuff like that, And,
yeah, and sneak out and just chase the thrill of
yeah,
just being just doing wild things as kids.
yeah. So that was pretty much all this kind of stuff we got into with our group of friends. Like, and there was a lot of us. It wasn't just like 4 or 5 of us. It was like if we all got together and we were all playing basketball at the courts, there was a lot of us.
Yeah, I'd say anywhere from like 15 to 30, depending on, like if the kids from that were lived on the outskirts of town, or if they lived in the country or somewhere, and they all made their way into town. Like, there was just a huge group of us, some younger, some older.
Yeah, so there was a lot of us.
So a lot of us, we started high school together around the 9th grade period, and we all started school together. Or was it 8th grade?
The freshman year, we all went to the same school.
Yeah, so a lot of us, we started school together, and then there came a point in time where a lot of the friend groups that we had grown up with, they ended up branching off, and they ended up going to a different school. They ended up going to Flanger Indian School, and it's a boarding school in South Dakota. And that idea, it came back from one of our friends' older cousins and brothers going to Flanger, and they would just always talk about Flanger Indian School and how fun and cool it was. And it just sounded like, because these kids, they got to stay in dormitories, and it was like your own little independent way of living, being in that type of boarding school. Obviously, boarding schools back in the day were a whole different thing. Yeah. But modern day, boarding school,
at least that one, yeah.
Yeah, it was, it just sounded like freedom, and like we were like, obviously, we wanted to feel what that felt like. Mm-hmm. We ended up not going. Like, we got the paperwork and stuff. It ended up not happening
for us.
Yeah, for us. But I mean, a few of our friends, they ended up transitioning and making that switch to Flanger Indian School.
Yeah, this was about sophomore years, whenever they all went to that school.
Yeah, and then so like these friends left, and then kind of new friends, kids that we considered friends but not like close friends, kind of stepped up to the plate at this point, because there was another school. It was just an elementary school, kind of all the way up until like 7th and 8th grade.
Yeah, it was called the day school.
Yeah, the Dunseith Indian Day School, and a lot of them kids that went to that school, they'd graduated from that school, and then they would either go to a different school or come to Dunseith, which they were only like 2 miles apart.
Yeah, there's Dunseith Elementary and Dunseith High School. Those were the schools that were in town, and then there was the Dunseith Day School, which was about a mile or 2 north.
Yeah, and if they ended up, they made that transition to our school, and then all these friends, they just kind of stepped up, and I think we all vibed together. We all connected in different ways, and it was just like the whole dynamic had completely changed in our friend group.
Yeah, because we all of us were always all about. Everybody was all about basketball. That's where we came from, a basketball school, so we all bonded over that type of stuff. We all just grew together as athletes. Um, we decided to a certain a certain point you got to put away. You have to put down all the shenanigans and stuff. Getting into high school, we're like, well, we can't keep on like getting into trouble like this. So at one point, we just decided like, let's not let's not mess around. Let's focus more so on what needs to be done. We got into sports, so like you have to at least have some decent grades, and you have to not get into so much trouble if you want to continue to play sports, and that became more important. So, yeah, so we decided to become better be better in school, and not only that, these friends had a lot of these friends that came down from this old school, they had to like drive to town, so they had vehicles. So that was like a new thing for us. Now we have friends who actually have vehicles, so like certain possibilities became more well possible. Like instead of walking around town or walking around, like we can go drive around now with these friends.
Yeah.
Like that, just though little things like that just felt like a new life.
And high school parties.
Yeah, high
Like you
school.
knew that like if there was going to be a party happening somewhere, you knew that you were, like you and your friends would find someone to buy liquor for you, and then you had a vehicle, you had the gas, and you had the whatever you were bringing to the party. That was a whole nother possibility itself too, just because you put down the crazy shenanigans, and then you start to grow up, and you start to you just want to experience something different.
Yeah,
New curiosities arise, I guess.
yeah, that's when hustling ways to make money became more about gas money and liquor for the weekend. It wasn't like an everyday thing. It was just like every, weekend or every other weekend.
Yeah, you're just influenced completely differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, the friends, they ultimately, like I said, they just changed the dynamic. Things just completely changed. The other friends that were in Flanger, they came back, so they would come back on break and come back for the summertime, whether it be spring break, Christmas break, and stuff like that. They would come back during those times, and when they came back, like there's like that sense of like, oh man, I missed you so much, like like they're back, and it was like almost like a breath of fresh air seeing them again. But whenever they did come back, things, you can definitely tell things were changed within the friend groups, because like we're all friends, every single one of us, but now like we matured and grew with these friends in high school, whereas in the friends that we grew up with doing the crazy things with, like they'd kind of grew up in their own way in a different school in a different area. So like we matured differently into more of a young adulthood. So like we didn't necessarily connect on a certain level anymore. Like we knew that they were our friends.
Yeah,
They
we
were
still all played like ball, and like then we still all played basketball together. But like when it came to like, okay, now it's the weekend in the summertime, or we're gonna go we're gonna go do like these other things with basically our newer friends.
yeah, we're just gonna do just the activities just changed. Everything just completely changed. Yeah, and they're like when they would come back on break from Flanger, they're they were still our friends at the end of the day. Like, no matter what, we still cared about them and we still loved them. But it was just the vibration had changed. It just drastically changed. You can feel the subtle differences in certain mannerisms and the slang, the way they talked and stuff, and just their approach to certain situations. So you can obviously feel that and see that. And we just kind of operated differently. Whereas in like we grew with these friends and we didn't grow the way we did with these friends. So it was just it just the whole thing just completely changed. But again, we were all still friends up until
Yeah.
graduation. It's just they graduated in a whole different state and we graduated where we grew up at.
Yeah.
And luckily, like things happen the way they do for a reason, and I'm obviously thankful and grateful for our mother completely denying us going to a different school.
Yeah.
Like I'm everything happens for a reason, whether you accept that or not.
Mm-hmm.
So there just became a certain time where we'd reached a certain age in high school where we'd met our cousin, who we didn't know at the time was our cousin, but we ended up figuring it out shortly after that he was our cousin.
Yeah, and that introduced a whole different aspect to our life. And I don't think a lot of people really I don't know if people really think about this, but when I look back on it, I can see it. Our cousin Duran, he, like I said, I don't think people think about this too much, but he actually played a pivotal role in terms of helping bridge this gap between Dunseith and Belcourt. Because at least when we were growing up, uh, there was this perception of like Dunseith kids only hang out with Dunseith kids and Belcourt kids only hang out with Belcourt kids. Like Belcourt didn't want to go party inside of Dunseith for whatever reasons, and Dunseith didn't want to go party in Belcourt. Like that's just what it was. Like I remember growing up seeing that and always hearing that. Oh, I'm not gonna go party in Belcourt. Don't go there. And saying the same thing. But when Duran was introduced into the picture, he lived right in the middle of the town, and he used to bring us to these Belcourt parties all the time, and we were always like those Dunseith kids that were inside the Belcourt parties or stuff like that. And then that's all that slowly bled through like all these towns. I'm not saying like we're the responsible ones for that, but when I really think about it, that's kind of where it seems like that's where it started. Now to where like Belcourt started to hang out with more Dunseith, and then Dunseith started to hang out with more Belcourt, and like kids from Belcourt transferred over to Dunseith school, and things like that. And it's to this day, like a lot, it's more common to where you see all like these people that you never would have thought were hanging out are like they all know each other and they have all grown with each other. So like I think about that nowadays, like so like yeah, that where that bridge was created.
Yeah, he definitely changed the dynamic. Like he has a personality that is just completely. Because I wouldn't say we were sheltered. We only stuck to who we knew, and he was more so like, I want to make friends, and like we kind of didn't really understand that concept, and that's what he did. And he wasn't afraid to just like step out and like venture off and make new friends and stuff. Like that was like the cool thing, and he knew a lot of people, and everything just tied together with him.
And that helped us become introduced with a lot of more people too.
Yeah, and just building more friendships, and ultimately just being more out there and wanting to just do different things.
Yeah, and then that's pretty much like, other than high school was pretty much just sports for us, doing whatever we can to make sure we're passing our grades. I had good grades, but it's not like high school was more so memory based for me. Like I didn't really, if there was a test coming up, I just memorized whatever needed to be memorized to be able to pass the test. And then as soon as the test was over, then I didn't have to think about it anymore. And I eventually kind of just forgot a lot of things that I ever went through with high school. But I did what I needed to do to be able to, keep going. Because obviously I was in sports, so I had to have somewhat good grades.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my high school experience was fun. Obviously, it was great. But I barely graduated. I just wasn't there mentally. I was like not exactly the smartest kid. I kind of cheated all the time, just so I can just get it over with. I just wanted to hurry up and finish high school and just get it over with. That's what it felt like for me. It was just all experience, and it was all getting to hang out with friends and getting to know the teachers. Like that's what makes a school a great school. A school is having great teachers, having good friends, and just enjoying your time. I didn't enjoy the some of the learning parts of it, but I mean, I still got through it, luckily. But I like I said, I cheated throughout high school. I plagiarized, and I did my best just so I can hurry up and get it over with.
Yeah.
And I would never recommend anybody dropping out, or even if you come to that point,
finish it.
Finish. If you get to that point, finish high school, or if you don't want to go to high school, get your GED and just get that education part down, because you're gonna need any one of those two things in order to even make another step in your life.
Yeah. The way the life is set up nowadays, that you kind of need those things.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys that are held back by just not having those things.
Yeah. But yeah, the teachers did it for us. They were like your friends too. They teased you. Everyone had a sense of humor about everything. Everything was jokes. High school was basically everyone just cracking one big joke.
Yeah. But again, like we said in the beginning, guys, this isn't topic oriented. This was more so just to give you guys
A
a
little bit
bat.
about who we are.
Yeah, a little tiny backstory about who we are, and for you guys that grew up together with us, you already know what it was like. For you kids that don't know us, that are from around the dunseith area, that's just a quick little brief story about what it was like growing up for us back then. We don't recommend doing the things that we did back then, even though it might still happen. It might be a whole different dynamic, but this is just to give you guys a quick rundown, because realistically, we've only given you guys like not even 10% of what it was truly like growing up, because
Yeah,
we
probably
def
not even that. A lot less than that, probably.
yeah, because I mean we 100% struggled. I'm gonna give you guys a quick story before we take another step further. One of the struggles that we went through growing up, I remember one time it was in the dead of winter, and there was a blizzard, and I remember school was called off. School was cut short. There was an early release from school, and I remember we all got back to our grandma's trailer, and this was all of us, me, him, and the three other kids that lived with us, and my sister Starlet. We all got home one day in the dead of winter, and the heat wasn't working, and immediately, like, grandma checks her her temperatures and stuff,
Propane.
and yeah, her propane levels, and comes to find out we're completely out of propane. Because some of those trailers back then, or maybe still now, a lot of them operate on propane, and we were completely out of propane, so we didn't have any a source of heat in the house. So our grandmother, like, quickly, like, she just thought right on the spot, and she immediately went to the oven, turned the oven on full blast, and just opened the door and just let that heat radiate, and then whatever space heater she could find, she plugged in. And then we all just kind of like,
That just bundle up.
yeah, we all turn the TV on, and just she makes an emergency call to the propane guys, and then we had to wait for a few hours for the propane guys to come back and refill, because luckily it had happened on a day when she got paid, and so she was able to catch up on the bill and refuel. But
I remember
yeah,
there were some times though where they're like it would be days though without heat. Like sometimes when it would just run out.
yeah, and then so that means no warm water, there was no heat, so there was days we did have definitely like our days of struggle. So if you ever
Sitting in the cold, inside your room playing games, and you blow and you can see the cold air.
Yeah, so we definitely we wouldn't we like what we said makes it imply that like we didn't struggle. We 100% struggled. Like we said, there was a lot of hardships growing up. There's no point in going into depth about those types of things, just because I mean what are you going to do with that type of information? The only thing you can really gather from it is, wow, life can definitely be worse.
Yeah.
For any case, I mean, even though we went through that struggle, there's still other people out there that are going through even harder struggles than us. Like, I mean, that was just a quick little, like, we can go into the detail about things like that happened to us, but we won't. Those can be saved for different scenarios and future topics in upcoming episodes.
And then, but yeah, and then just two things before we end it off here. If you haven't heard this by now, I don't know where you've been, but yeah, Leonard Peltier is home. Welcome home, Leonard.
Yep. In case you didn't know, Leonard Peltier is actually an enrolled member in the same tribe we're enrolled in. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know the guy. I don't. The only thing we know is his story.
Yeah.
And all the media that's been behind it since the '70s. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Well,
he's home. He's back in his home territory. He's with his family again. So I mean, welcome home, Leonard.
yeah, we're happy that you're home with your loved ones and your close ones.
Yep. So, and another thing too, being that this is kind of like our more in-depth episode, we want to dedicate this very first real episode to a really close friend of ours that had passed away 2 years and a couple of days.
Yeah, 2 years ago, he passed away. His name was Raimound Jones. We had met him on the third day that we were living in Los Angeles. And yeah, he really showed us the ropes on what to do in LA, how to like really to be able to keep going. And he just showed us all. He showed us so much about LA, and he was yeah, it was you know, we left LA and back in December of that year, and we knew we were he was our best friend. He was our best friend in LA, and he we were with him. I'd say 90% of our stay in LA.
Yeah, and he also, even once we left LA, we were still best friends. Like we still kept in contact. We still talked on the phone. We still messaged each other. And then I went back to LA back in 2018, and immediately like that was the first guy I reached out to because he was the only guy, the only person I could really be like hanging out with on the streets and stuff.
Hmm. And yeah, he was a very, very talented individual. Like he was extremely talented. He was out there hustling, and he was trying to make some. He was out there trying to make something happen as well. And part of his story is actually a big reason why we wanted to create 818. Like we said, he was very talented. He can he was a talented songwriter is what I'm trying to say. He could sing and he can rap. There would be some days where we would be, you know, go a couple days without seeing him, and then here we would meet up with him, and then here he would have a song ready, a couple songs ready, and he would just, you know, he would say rap them to us, sing them to us, whatever, and he would just get our opinions on it, or he would always find some sort of catchy hook in his head, and he would build on it. The only problem was, you know, he was just like I just said, he was hustling in LA too. So a lot of his money, if his money went towards, you know, his food and a hotel, so he can sleep, so he didn't have to sleep on the streets or anything. And he didn't have at this time, at least in 2017, it didn't seem like home studios were as big as they are now. Like it seems everyone has a home studio. But at least in 2017, no, it didn't seem like no one was really flashing that back then, and he just never had he never had that place to go to be able to express his ideas. He was just this man who was just burning with all these ideas, all this creativity, but he just never had that outlet, and unfortunately, he never really got that.
Yeah, earlier in his LA, like when he first arrived in LA, I know he did some modeling and he did a little bit of like small part-time acting, and he did like get to record a couple songs, but it wasn't like he is nothing ever really came out of that. He, yeah, I mean, I guess one of the best ways just to describe him is he was ambitious. He was a go-getter. He
Very charismatic.
very charismatic. He was full of life and full of energy. He was just a one of a kind person. Like to this day, I've never met anyone like Raymond. You know, so I mean, yeah, we want to dedicate this first real episode to Raymond Jones. If you're watching this and you're from the West Coast,
East Coast.
yeah, sorry, not West Coast, East Coast, which he did know a lot of people on the West Coast, but he had mentioned his mother's name in passing, and he talked about her once in a while, and he talked about her daughter. But if you're from the East Coast and you're from around the Virginia Richmond area, that's where he said his mother was from, and where he was from, where his family was from, was around that area. So
pretty sure his daughter must still live there.
yeah, so his mother's name is Nancy Jones. So if you're from around that area, you grew up around the Virginia area, and you know this man, that's who we're referring to. And if you are a family member of his, reach out to us. We'll put our contact information, and the links and stuff. And do reach out to us if you can. We have pictures, we have some videos of him, and we have lots of memories and stories of the guy, of what his final years were like before he had passed away.
Yeah, and we you know, and at the end of this video, we'll attach a couple photos of him, and then we'll put a video of him.
Yeah.
So that you guys can actually see, you know, who exactly we're talking about.
Yep. So yeah, well, that's all I have for today.
Yeah, make sure you guys subscribe to our channel. Go to our Facebook. On Facebook, it's 818 Creators. We have a TikTok. We have Instagram. I think our Instagram page is under Project Infinite. But yeah, Project Infinite, 818 Creators. Go follow our pages and subscribe, like our videos. Yeah,
that's all I have.
And hit us up on our Gmail. We'll have our emails in the description. You can email either one of us. You can ask us a question. And like we said, that's ultimately what we hope, that you guys can send us in questions or comments. It could be about anything, and we'll just do our best to get to it.
Yeah. Again, Raymond, we're doing it.
Yeah. We love you, Raymond. And yeah.
We miss you.
We miss you. And we're here.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
He just started up, but he made it rational. It was a little bit of good thing to get that kind of Right. So, and here we go.
What happened, bro? Come on, man. Oh, you're trying to get crazy. One time. Crazy pulse, and I don't know no umbrella. All I know is white tees, sticky jeans, and Rockefellers. I've been standing on the corner trying to get the rent in. Got a couple ounces today, girls said you need to twin. Even though my heart's big, they won't let the boy in. It's all about who you know and all my friends will pretend. Like they don't give me no other options, so I'm trapping and robbing, waiting for someone to come and save me like Batman or Robin. One day I held my daughter close and I asked her if she was happy, and she said, yeah, I'm happy as long as you are, daddy. So I held her even tight. Told her days a fighter for my daughter. I'll go for that cannon. You know, Mariah, see, I don't know what the future holds. All I know is getting money and keep stacking till the day that I go.